there is a port of call for travelers from 1,000 worlds. A sanctuary for those seeking peace. A haven for smugglers and thieves. And a dream for the future. It is a forum dedicated to the survival of the universe. It is a UN far in neutral territory. It is a space station called Babylon 5.
Premieres Wednesday at 8 on Channel 13.
In a timeless battle between war...
They're firing on anything that moves.
...and peace.
I've come to offer you an adventure.
There is only one hope for the future.
No one is pure. No one.
One dream kept alive.
Surrender your vessels or be destroyed.
By an outpost in space dedicated to peace.
We'll strike back, and we'll strike back hard.
Babylon 5, the series.
Coming soon to TTV4.
And ho, here we go. And back with another exclusive episode. I have Will Johnson, formerly of the Downbelow, a Babylon 5 podcast. Here we're doing just that, just discussing 5 seasons of the entire series, spin-off show, and then the individual movies that followed. And fortunately, I'll have the trailers to introduce each one for those just now getting into this franchise. One thing that does appeal to us is just talking about shows that, you know, for this podcast that really are always revisited, have always been discussed or mentioned. There's always been a fan base for it. It's just so unreal. And one of those does happen to be Babylon 5, which, made so many people better known, so many recreated a bunch of alternatives to the sci-fi fan base. It was so unreal to think that with this and Stargate, they proved that, you know, and there didn't have to be another franchise, you know, like Star Wars or Star Trek. You could have ones that took the best bits from them while being their own worlds. And it was just so unheard of. And with this one in particular, it's been interesting how so many careers are launched from it. So many themes are kind of repeated loosely, and for better or worse, many who talk about this have just always been able to find an audience for it. I don't know if it's still on Amazon Prime. I think you have to pay for it now, but it was free about last year, and
it was free on another station as well. I can't remember the name of it. Comet.
Comet TV. It's either Comet or Pluto, and it's just free cable. It's one of those free cable apps, and it just plays various TV shows daily, and that's hard because it's live TV. It's like, well, you're not going to be able to necessarily. Can I record it? No. Okay. Nah. But probably, I guess right now, Vudu has been getting some. The Walmart streaming app has been getting some good discussion because. Basically, they got some of the older archived, like, network versions of certain shows, and they kind of just, even though it's full screen, sometimes it cuts to widescreen reportedly, according to a few Reddit posts. But I've been meaning to get that since I own Crusade on Prime, and I would like to get a better version of the show. You know, I'll always try and buy the DVDs used when I see them on occasion and introduce them to people, but it'd be cool to, just show it on Vudu the way it's meant to be seen, as good as we're going to get for now.
It would make so much sense for it to be on HBO Max since Warner Brothers owns that. But
I know, that's a wonderful idea. I never thought of that, but that's so true. Is like, this is the studio that knows there's a fan base, but they're not interested in working on it. And the creator, he doesn't have enough money, to buy it back from him. Why would you? It just would be so much harder.
Yeah.
Especially if you got a bigger studio talking smack about you and saying, "Oh, he took our property away from us," I can't blame him for being cynical, yet at the same time, I think because he hasn't been playing the network game for so long, I think he's just fed up because they screwed him over so many times, not only with this and Crusade, but also with the show Sense 8 for Netflix. And so, yeah, just long story short, guys, J. Michael Straczynski was a comic book writer. He later became known for the Like It or Hate It Spider-Man comics and, Superman comics. But he was previously known for Captain Planet. Not Captain Planet. What's it called?
Oh, the Real Ghostbusters.
Real Ghostbusters and I
want to say She-Ra.
He did write for He-Man and She-Ra type stuff. He teams up with a veteran producer, Doug Netter, and it's Captain Power is what it is, which is a show that lasts a full season. Finally got a DVD release with him even being interviewed, but it was just one of those. It was criticized for being a little violent, but for both kids and adults, and it's a fun show. You could easily get into it nowadays if you wanted something else, kind of like Space 1999 or Star Trek or even Power Rangers. And he works with Showtime on Jeremiah. He then gets back into the writing screenplays like World War Z, Ninja Assassin, and Thor in the 2011 movie, and Changeling for Eastwood. And he talks about how because he'd been doing so much TV, everyone's like, where did this cool writer come from? We've never seen him in the film industry. So he does some Terminator comic books also, which I had no idea, but I totally would love to get.
I read some of those. Yeah, they're really good.
That's lovely. And so I guess you could say it made sense that he later teamed up with the Wachowski brothers. I always kind of found him similar to, creating all these Fifth Element type, universes. He's pretty much done it all. He's done so many books, movies, and comics, and even plays. So, I mean, for him to have this big a career, as well as, writing even comics that are tie-ins to other movies and shows, he's just been a go-to dude, just all the time. Just if you want to even just go to his Wikipedia page, you'll just see countless. It's like, wow, he did that. Oh my God. And even if he gets self-indulgent, he does it in a way where it's kind of easy to see why he's a fan of, The West Wing with Aaron Sorkin. He has kind of that, just the whole dialogue is everything, character is everything, develop everybody, have the words. He's even been his own personal critic saying, yeah, I got too wordy with that episode and everything, but you can't kind of blame him too badly, because I mean he really does care about just having everybody stand out and not just rely on just the actors to create everything like most shows kind of do. And I mean, it kind of helped that, after Captain Power, he wrote for, he freelanced for Jake and the Fat Man, and then yeah, there you go. And even after B5, he was always part of the Murder, She Wrote franchise. He would write, various episodes early on, and then years later just wrote a few of the movies. And so I think that just really helped him stay relevant. He was just always just picking everybody's brains. He was good at just being in the door. And I mean, a lot of people, he embraced the internet. That's been noted in several, different reviews and movies, and it definitely played to his benefit. It just acknowledged that, before the WB, Warner Brothers has this, WNN network, they moved this franchise later to TNT, and, and do a few, other TV movies, and one movie that, airs on SciFi, and later a direct-to-video movie that kind of closes it all out. But I mean, for a franchise like this, I do have to say this was something. My uncle used to watch it. He was in a crappy married life at this point. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but he would always watch the show when he could, and then he wasn't able to when it moved to TNT, and he didn't have, cable. So it was interesting how he stayed up with it all these years. I got into this in college, probably circa 2012. I just always knew about it. I'd see parts of it on Sci-Fi Channel re-airing, but I just, who has the time? I was already in the morning, worn out from watching hysterical cartoons and even Mystery Science Theater, which in a way, I totally recommend to fans of that show, because this show is very zany, very nutty at first. How did you get into it?
Well, I was very much a Star Trek fan, but I don't really remember how I became aware of it, but I guess I heard about it, and I just decided just to sit down and give it a shot. And it came on Saturday nights where I lived, so I used to watch like Saturday Night Live religiously, but I just decided to watch this show. It was when I was in high school.
Nice.
So I decided to watch it, and then I just kept watching it. And later I went and figured out at which point I started watching, and this would have been somewhere around the end of season 3.
Really?
To just pick it up in the middle of it, because back then we didn't have everything on DVD or streaming to catch up on it.
You don't set the video recording, it's done. And Krasinski and other people even would note how, I think it's even Claudia and Jerry Doyle, the actors here, mentioned how it got very ridiculous after a while, how it would sometimes be overridden by a local, sports game. And so people wouldn't watch the follow-up episode on the day. And so it's easy to lose viewership. It's kind of wild how it kept finding an audience on DVD around early 2000s. The VHSs, I think they did just about all the episodes up until like 98. So I don't think you can find any of season 5 on VHS.
Yeah, I kept watching when I went to college. I made it because my freshman year in college, it was January. My freshman year was when it moved to TNT, and 5 nights a week they would play the old episodes. It started at season 1 and went all the way through. So I would make it a point to be home from wherever for dinner at time to watch the episode or record it, because I did have a VCR. But so that's how I got caught up on the first 4 seasons, or the parts I hadn't seen. And I don't think when I first started watching I knew anything about, I guess we'll get into it, I didn't know anything about Sheridan until they started airing reruns on TNT.
On Babylon 5, some conspire to keep the beast while others fight to destroy it. Babylon 5. Wednesdays at 8 on WGNT.
There was someone else before. Not Sheridan, Sinclair.
Sinclair, no, but that's fine. No, that's true. My pal Tony Dodson watched a lot of it back in the day, and he was always just so pissed. He's like, if I want to watch Boxleitner, I'll watch Tron. Why'd they get rid of the old captain? He was cool, and I think he tuned in. He liked the episode where they team up together in season 3, but he's like, why? And I'm like, well, you don't understand. The show must go on, and he's just one of those, if an actor changes up, that's how he was with Criminal Minds and their shows. He just stops watching, becomes too attached. And I'm like, I treat this show kind of like I do with Major Crimes and the Closer. Is like, if most of the main crew is there and there's just one person anchoring it who was already established in the previous show, I'll bite. Obviously, some shows really do suffer because they just, whatever creativity is there, everyone's just not jiving, or it's past its prime and they're just rushing it, just trying to get it done. And I get how, it can be hard to do, especially when everyone else is just, working overnight, getting only 3 hours of sleep. I get it, but at the same time, it's just a little annoying. So launching into season 1, I really did do justice and watched the whole thing 2 years ago. I just had always seen parts of it here and there and seen people talk to it to death. But season 1 is definitely very slow, very mysterious,
very episodic,
taking its time, but always having something unusual every minute. I actually do have friends who never gave this the time of day because they did not like the graphics, and this is without even realizing how it was converted later on. They lost the the video files, so they weren't able to remaster it properly. But I mean, with this one, I wouldn't say it's make it or break it. I know a lot of people who swear this is the best one, and others who hate it. So I'll just say it pretty much just introduces the whole conflict. There was already a TV pilot called The Gathering. That one I actually watched after watching the first few initial episodes, and I kind of enjoyed it. And it's kind of a fun kind of music video, but if you want anything deep, you're not going to get it. It is very, I guess you could say, an incomplete TV movie of the week. A lot of people complain about Tamlin Tomita of Karate Kid 2 fame kind of being a questionable character, and she ends up kind of ironically kind of being mentioned in spin-off material as one of the ones who was mentioned to be a traitor on the station. So yeah, it kind of makes sense for her departure. But
then they replaced the doctor as well.
I know.
Which I would love to see. They mentioned him later on in the series, but yeah, it would be nice to see more of him. But we got Dr. Franklin, so. Dr.
Franklin, yeah. So we got Sinclair, played by Michael O'Hare, was a character actor and later had schizophrenia and had to leave after season 1, but he has the authoritative voice. And you have Ivanova, who's part Russian, part Jewish, executive officer, and then you have the security chief, Garibaldi, played by Jerry Doyle. And yes, he is bald. He's joked about as being the Bruce Willis of the show. You have Dr. Franklin, like you say, who is medical examiner and very intelligent, can be arrogant or very comforting depending on who he's talking to. And that's where it kind of becomes, the show was pitched as Hill Street Blues. At times it does even kind of feel like the better moments of earlier St. Elsewhere and ER. Definitely am fascinated by him in kind of a Geordi on Star Trek kind of way, where he's just very fascinated by everything and very down to earth,
Yeah. We had a running joke on our podcast about Dr. Francis. Yeah, he did, maybe some inappropriate closeness to some of his patients. I'll just put it that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially where he meets what's her name, Mary Ann Johnson from In the Heat of the Night in that one episode. Is like, whoa, okay, whoa. And I think she lasts like 2 episodes and then is gone. And I'm like, doctors can't have romance, I guess. But I don't know. I think I'd be interested to know about that, because I know later on there are characters who are introduced and I totally just space out of them. I just forget them as soon as they enter, because, it was the network interfering and the creator had to slowly make them descend to the background or kill them off, because he's like, you're not messing with my vision, buddy.
Yeah.
So this is kind of more... This is better than the Star Wars movies at Outer Space Politics. You got Londo, who's basically a Napoleonic race of Centauri aliens. He's played by Peter Jurasik, who was the snitch on Hill Street Blues. And then you got Ambassador Jakar of the Narn race, and he's played by Andreas Katsulas, who was filming this the same year as he was the one-armed man villain in the movie version of The Fugitive. So, yeah, these are all actors who've been around for years. They're definitely remembered for them more. I gotta say, a lot of people say, these guys have either a love-hate or just kind of they're very much like the similar, around the same time, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which despite B5, being complete and scripted before this, maybe even having some episodes filmed before, it doesn't come out until after Deep Space Nine comes out. And they apparently had a settlement or something between Paramount and Warner Brothers. But I think, I'll just say this. I think you can enjoy all of Star Trek and B5, but I definitely feel like B5, for whatever reason, despite its budget and some occasional hammy acting, I think you're definitely going to get into this more just because of how it brings a lot of humanity to its weirdness. Just having this kind of just sneak attacks, just some turmoil in the kingdom, so to speak, just some people just up to mischief on the station, just kind of has a lot of fun. There's a lot of policing. Don't get me wrong, they're not Nazi cops, thank God. Yeah. Oh, God. If anybody had said anything inappropriate, this show would have just dated poorly beyond belief. But the security guys are always kind of thrown off by detail. in many ways, it is kind of like the Star Wars cantina if you had to police it on a station in space. And I'll pass it over to you. What was your general takeaway on it? Did it? It hooked me instantly, but I could see where it still had a ways to go. But how did you react when you were watching it and have seen it over the years? General take on it?
I think I always thought of season 1 as being the weakest, but when I started rewatching it for the podcast, I think we all really very much appreciated season 1, and we kind of really came to like Jeffrey Sinclair, even though there's so much criticism because of his performance and his kind of voice, and but
was kind of weird because it's like he has the body posture, but he doesn't really do anything with it. He just kind of relies on the voice, and he was blasted by critics when this came out, apparently, according to a few different articles, and yet he kind of resonated with a lot of TV fans, and it's like, wow, okay, I've never seen such conflicting accounts.
Yeah, but there's some stinker episodes in season 1, but there are also some really good ones in it. The ones that basically are starting to set up the story arc, which, for the time,
yeah,
E5 was so influential on TV. Even JMS, J. Michael Straczynski, says that people have told him, privately that we kind of based our story arc structure on Babylon 5, like Damon Lindelof and Ron Moore. Yeah.
And that is so complimentary because, you looking at this now, you totally see, he was supposed to do Star Trek Enterprise, but they totally stole his blue, NASA type outfits, Starship Troopers, even though that's a satire, to be fair, the book already had similarities, but then you have Space Above and Beyond, which is a short-lived cult show, totally worth seeing for every generation, and then the new Battlestar Galactica, and yes, obviously Stargate, and maybe even parts of Dark Matter, just with the mystery and intrigue, how one moment there's a Alien or Blade Runner type moment, and then it often finishes off. I mean, especially here in season 1, there's like one episode where you're totally reminded of aliens, and then there's even a Predator type creature in one. Is like, jeez. Yeah, I'm totally with you there. There are some episodes where you'll watch them and it's like, I like the beginning. It kind of had some lame one-liners at the end. That mystery was
episode.
Oh, is that the one? Yeah, it all topples all over him. I'm like, did that really need to be in there? Because it literally didn't look like it went with the entire set at all. And I did at once have a big TV fanboy friend of mine just say, whoever designed this should have been thrown in front of a firing squad. I'm like, ouch. He was not digging the set design. But to be fair, I think that's why it did so well. Just finishing up on time. You had actors who were motivated. They all went home at 6 p.m. Got to spend time with their family, so no divorces. Well, for most of them. And they had someone who had worked in the theater art scene, so he was good at just making a lot of stuff out of nothing over a limited time frame. That the average episode would often cost $600,000. I'm like, wow, that, how do you do that? Because I mean, the average Star Trek episode was $2 million. So they really were just embracing their low budget side. I have to say, the cinematographers though, especially John C. Flynn, who later directs a bunch of episodes, and had worked on every Stephen Bochco show, like, LA Law, Hill Street Blues, and NYPD Blue. I do have to commend him for really just using a lot of experimental type shots, tracking shots, even, handheld and shoulder mounted, steady cam. And it's around the same time where it's being embraced on stuff like Homicide, Life on the Street, and Law and Order. And kudos to him. I really did make a difference, and I think that's why it's held up so long. It's not so staticky like a sitcom,
Yeah.
But I think, like you say, it really does get going like in the later half, although it does take a bunch to realize, like even 3 episodes in the following seasons, like, whoa, wait, so the main guy is not returning. Okay. It's like, what did they mean by he ran away? Oh, he went into hiding. Got it. Like you say, it is pretty self-indulgent of itself. There's enough interesting and kind of what the fuck kind of stuff that gets your attention. But I think it survived so long because some people eventually got an idea that, oh, it's leading somewhere. It's just so weird. I like the sexy looking cast, so I'll give it a go. But like you say, it doesn't draw you right away to where you're like, And yeah, my sister instantly bailed on this when I was introducing this to her, and my mother was kind of not into it at first. She just found the makeup and other stuff bizarre. And personally, I kind of like the makeup, but I can understand why some who are a little more nitpicky and want everything to be kind of like Stan Winston or Rick Bader or Hellraiser level, and they're gonna not dig some of the stuff. I think it helps that they have loads of various TV actors guesting on here, but even especially Star Trek guys, like one of Khan's right-hand man from Wrath of Khan is in one episode, but then you got once again himself, Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov on the original track, as Bester. Yeah. And I think the Psy Corps is interesting because you instantly know that there's a bunch of corruption, and this is basically a Nazi empire that, America's a whole different thing. It's, I guess, didn't they mention there was a Third World War at one point, or am I getting that mixed up with something else?
I don't remember a Third World War. I know there was one in Star Trek. Oh,
okay. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. But it's kind of similar where it's a fascist, paramilitary government. And, both my mother and I really do kind of dig Koenig's role here as Bester here, because it's a total stretch from Chekhov. Chekhov, I don't know. I know some people dug him. Girls thought he was cute. Guys kind of liked how he got to pilot the ship and fire the weapons. I don't know. I thought he did okay in the movies, but on the show, I'd always be like, just let Sulu handle it, dude. You're just stretching your R's and you're Russian, hitting a home to us that you're Russian. Here he really does kind of, I'd even say he has some kind of lovely voiceovers, and you could even argue that his humor is tied with Dr. Franklin, Garibaldi, and Jakar's. He just has some unusual social overlooks, and it's kind of weird for him because he knows what entity he is, yet at the same time he's so used to brainwashing people that he knows what he's become, but he's so kind of proud of what he is. And he's so used to using fear tactics because that's kind of how he's survived as long as he's done it.
I really enjoyed all the side course. I just found out like 2 days ago that a new friend of mine is a Babylon 5 fan, and I found out because he was trashing the side core. He was saying that was the worst part of Babylon 5. I was like, no, it's not.
They definitely were more interesting villains, and I have to say they definitely play better than some of the secret police, the Gestapo. I know they were introduced on Deep Space Nine, but when you see them on Voyager, it's like, just be your own show.
Yeah.
And it's like with this, you definitely, like you say, it's going somewhere, and you're kind of fearing them a bit. Not like, but it's like, oh, this cannot be good. They're sent by the president. They answer to him. No wonder every other show had to be like this or the X-Files. Everyone often goes when, it's a conspiracy show. Oh, yeah, it's Twin Peaks or X-Files. I'm like, I'm getting more of a B5 reference, especially if it's a 5-season run, like Person of Interest. I'm like, I'm going to totally tip my hat to them because, B5 definitely makes a lot of serialized TV cool. It definitely, for whatever reason, the Warner executives, I think it was Nutter who was keeping him at bay, the producer, and Straczynski was just running wild, and he pretty much finds out right on. It's like, okay, you director, you're producer, you guys, you're going to guest direct, and after this episode, you're done. You totally don't get it. You were able to get it done on time, but you just don't get it. I do recall some people saying Adam Nimoy wasn't well liked. I could understand that because I know he only directed like 2 to 3 episodes.
I didn't hear that.
But see, that's just it. It was in one of those like Q&A groups, and they couldn't remember where they heard it. I'm like, it's a rumor, so you kind of couldn't back up the rumor. It helps that a lot of the actors who were being unpleasant, that they had a no bullying policy, and this comes from one of the DVDs you get from the official site came out in 2016, a few years before Jerry Doyle passed away. He and Claudia Christian even mentioned how another actor, Robert Rosler of Nightmare on Elm Street 2, was known for being a prick, and they pretty much gabbed enough to where Straczynski quietly just wrote him off as dying in one episode. He's like, okay, he's done after these next few episodes. And so I think that's lovely. That's definitely a rarity. Nowadays, everyone's just so used to different personas and just blinded by the money. They only are going to fire someone if someone just flat out is just refusing to do the work. And it's just so annoying how it's still a thing. I'm like, no, you got to be civilized. And I know a lot of people are used to it because, it's long hours. Everyone's restless, just wanting to get it done. And
actors are known to be weird or difficult.
I mean, and that I can understand why a lot of them, when they're done acting, they don't want to risk being typecast or being offered crappy, not so different roles, that they just go into directing. They pull a Eric LaSalle, Timothy Busfield, everybody on 30-something or ER pretty much just gets into directing TV.
A lot of the Star Trek actors are directing now.
Oh yeah, Jonathan Frakes, but yeah, even so many other ones like Robert Duncan McNeil had a big career on Chuck, and then you have Roxanne Dawson, who played Torres on Voyager. She directed all various shows like Crossing Jordan, The Closer, and it's just awesome seeing. Yeah, and it's just awesome seeing these people is like they really do know how to get everything done on time. They've been studying with all the people. They've been had a good word put in for them. And yeah, Frakes, he was having to remember doing so good at it. He had to remember to teach himself how to act again when he did the new Picard show. And Dawson, she mentioned how she was absolutely sick the first day. And she was like, this is make it or break it. I'm not going to let on that I'm feeling very sick today. I'm like, man, you go, girl. I can't. Who can do that? Yeah, he did so many goofy kids movies and Sci-Fi Channel stuff under different names. He didn't take it seriously, but he was having lots of fun. And on the Crusade DVD, he at one point even jokes. He's like, "Yeah, we got to film it just like those how they do it on NYPD Blue. They just do all those circulating around. It's all fun." And it definitely, I will say, his episodes definitely feel like he's just kind of letting the style do the talking. He's just so distracted and having too much fun doing it. By that point, you're kind of not as aware of it because, you're just paying attention to the big plot line. I do have to say, season 1, like you say, if you watch it at first, it's just kind of be a mixed bag. But if you have one of those new episode guidebooks, including a few very recent and very well worded ones, you definitely get a better feel for it. You're definitely going to need a bit of an assistance. So if you're going to get into this, definitely make sure that you are a hardcore fan of Star Wars or Trek. I'll definitely say, in a way, if you can't even get into Star Trek, which, curses, how dare you, but there's plenty of that who are that way. If you can't get into stuff like that, I think you could still get into B5. Because, more or less, it kind of does have enough intrigue. There's always kind of a shit hitting the fan on the station, and it always ends with a full-scale battle each season. And so it definitely has similar intrigue to Star Wars. It just uses all the Star Trek type verbiage and technology, computer activate, shit like that. But
I love how in season 1 they just slowly start to introduce the villains for a lot.
Yeah, I was surprised how they let out the cat out of the bag that quickly. Because what show does that nowadays? Usually you don't get it until like the cliffhanger for season 2, or nowadays a lot of shows do it, but between 2020 and 93, it was still kind of a rarity to see it all just laid out on the table. So it's definitely a rarity. I definitely didn't see it coming. I knew there was a lot of political intrigue and supposedly crooked White House equivalent officials, but it was like, damn, okay, there's a giant ass explosion. Who caused it? So now it's kind of going into Rashomon-ville. Who could have done it? Curses. I've forgotten to introduce Delenn, who is a human-looking alien of the Minbari race. They are counter to the Centauri and the Narns, and they pretty much make up this whole coalition, just different aliens all talking to each other, while the humans are basically becoming not the judge or jury, but just kind of just the final, helping rule out a verdict and hopefully resolve it. They don't always resolve it because that would just be boring if they did. But what was your take on her? Who could have seen that she was going to start having a thing for Sheridan?
Yeah, well, when I first started watching the show, I guess it was already kind of back, but I really did love Lynn, even though they kind of poke fun at her on the podcast, but you know, she's one of the best characters on the show. And then
it's an LGBT show before it was a thing.
then a few years later, she shows up on Lost. I'm like, hey, I know who that is. That's Lynn from Babylon 5.
Oh, she was so gorgeous without the makeup in earlier years. But yeah, when they finally give her hair and everything, just the crown, I'm like, okay, I can dig it. So yeah, enter season 2. Sheridan's gone missing. There's a new captain assigned. It's Sheridan, played by Bruce Boxleitner, in his first big TV gig since How the West Was Won TV show in the 70s. So some people kind of have a love-hate relationship. Some people like him but feel like he kind of loves the sound of his own voice, and other people kind of, I don't know, for whatever reason, despite him being a guy who kind of is very hearty and not necessarily always funny, he is kind of a badass, if that makes sense, but kind of a natural kind of leading man. So I guess that's kind of the draw of the show. They were able to just really just draw you in. Is like, okay, he's not just the new guy. He is just a similar no-nonsense guy. He does act kind of similar by principle, like by Sinclair, but at the same time, he's already breaking a bunch of rules. It's one of those, don't mention it, a few different episodes. I guess what really just draws one into it is how he understands about the alien race, the Shadows, which literally that's what they look like. And he's, keeping a bunch of guys. He's kind of being bad cop and letting Garibaldi and all the other guys be good cops. And, we're also introduced to we get more of what's his name?
Kosh.
There is Kosh. That's a little detailed.
Good, Zach.
Yeah, Zach. We're introduced to Zach, who's another officer. It's Jeff Conaway. Yeah, plays Zach Allen, and he gets some comedic lines. He's kind of more just kind of a righteous as opposed to, hardy har har, I'm an asshole, like Garibaldi. We got a bunch of other characters. Some people have been kind of just supporting people, and they get more screen time. Season 2 is pretty slow, but it's still kind of a little more comfortable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, in my mind, season 2, it started out right off the bat just so much better than season 1. But then when I was rewatching it for the podcast, I'm like, oh wait, it takes a little while for it to really pick up. In my memory, my memory was wrong about that.
I'm with you. It's kind of a slow build up, and then midway through, it's like nonstop frantic, but deliberate, as opposed to I feel like something's going on and I don't know what's going on. But no, something's going on, and now you're really even more divided with Jakar and Londo, because now they are really backstabbing each other, and they've started to show different sides of them. Londo's kind of more a playboy, and even more so, and Jakar has shown a few different sides of him, saying, I'm not just a ruthless dude out to kill people. Actually, him being attacked, and I'm doing this for my home world. So it's like, okay, I understand. You're not just, at first I thought he was a saboteur or just gonna keep the conflict going on.
Yeah, Jakar was kind of an ass. Well, he's kind of a jerk in season 1, but then season 2, you see a different side of him. And Londo shows all this character development as well. And season 2 is where you really start to see the conflict with the Shadows pick up steam a lot more. There's so much going on. You see, what's her name? Talia Winters, who
we had a Thompson, who later leaves this for NYPD Blue, and I see some people hate her and other people, I don't know, her voice just always turned me on, and I'd watched 24 so many times the season she was on, and I just always...
Yeah, I remember. She left NYPD Blue to go do headline news for a while.
Oh yeah.
But every once in a while, I'll like flipping through the channels and she'll pop up in something that like some TV show. But we had a running joke on our show because I always, the way that she speaks, she kind of moves her mouth in a weird way. But then I like watch video of myself speaking, and I'm like, oh, I do the same thing, so I have no room to, make fun of her.
Yeah, it is kind of. At first, I'm like, is she an alien in human form? Oh yeah, they're like the Betazoids in Star Trek. They're telepathic. Okay, so that's why they're going full blown weird.
Yeah. And we got Lita Alexander back. She was in the pilot, but then disappeared. But she came back in season 2.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's confusing about it at first. Like, whoa, oh, so they're acknowledging that. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's what's very unusual about it, is like now it's kind of, you don't really see much of Bester as much, and at the same time you're seeing kind of where more TV shows have dared to go. If I had to give examples, probably NCIS, the Unit, or 24. They're kind of just going for the whole approach where everyone has to work together and just different conflicts. There's a mission each episode. But yeah, I definitely I can see why this is kind of the breaking point. Some people continue on, others don't bother. But I think it's a way more refreshing one. It's definitely more dramatic without being melodramatic. There's plenty of other episodes that don't really go anywhere. There's like maybe free portions that do, and the rest is just kind of a, it was going to be a victim to being outdated one way or the other anyway. Like someone being infected, seeing something that's not really there, that they had to have stuff like that because, people loved stuff like Twilight Zone and all the other what the fuck episodes of Star Trek. So they had it. And in a way, I think it gets away with it because Straczynski just loves literature and books as a whole. How can he not when he came from an abusive childhood? And so he, in a way, it's not a homage or a ripoff. It's a love letter, if that makes sense. I definitely took a liking to what's his name, played by Jakar's bodyguard, who's a captured alien Narn, played by martial arts. Because at first he's introduced in a Running Man type thing. They're kidnapped by a bunch of aliens and forced to fight each other to the death on a ship. I'm like, whoa, okay. So there's definitely a lot of cyberpunk elements, like Blade Runner or Total Recall at times on this show. I mentioned Running Man. There's definitely a bunch of people who fight to the death or have collars on their head,
yeah,
trying to free them. There's definitely some slower moments. I don't really ever have a problem with the slow moments on shows like these for whatever reason, but I can see why some of them can be in drag for some. Shows like The Expanse would not exist without shows like this, though. It's just so much level of detail, and anyone should be just thankful that any of it is entertaining at all, as opposed to a misfire that looks good, So as a whole, would you rank it higher than 1, or just a little about the same or less than on the recent rewatch? I mean,
I put it definitely higher than season 1. There are fewer stinkers. I don't know if there are any real stinkers. Maybe one.
There might be a few episodes where Wando is pretty much, it's about his sex life. I'm like, I don't want to know that.
Yeah, but there's
I don't want to know that.
There are a lot of really interesting, really good episodes.
There was one episode where someone tells Sheridan something very important, and he just uses, he's played by Robert Foxworth, who's done a lot of voiceovers for Transformers and been in pretty much every other show from West Wing to Law and Order. Just always been the go-to guest star actor with a deep voice. And he uses like I think he goes, "Consider me a spider in a trapdoor." And I'm like, that's a little too cute. Stop over here with the puns and symbolism.
I think this is the season where Straczynski started his streak of episodes written. He wrote every episode from somewhere here until somewhere in season 5. Yeah.
He's just trying to get it out and have it make sense. And
he wants it to be exactly the way he wants it to be. Like, who's better to do it than myself?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you write 20-something episodes a season?
Oh, man. And that I don't know how he did it. He must have had some serious great coffee working, because, I mean, he is flat out just churning them in. He would literally be on set all day and then go home and write all night. How can you do that? So
Yeah.
he must have been taking some great naps, because, most of us, that's like writing an essay for our final and then just dragging it out, trying to rewrite it multiple times before we just finally click the submit button.
What do they say? Most people are only productive for about 6 hours a day of working.
I've heard that, and I can't. And it's kind of the problem with writing is, like, all the good stuff. You spend so many hours just walking around. What can I do? What can I do to make this better? Something you haven't seen. And I've been writing some scripts myself, and it's only been taking like 3 years. I'm like, gotta rework this. It's too derivative. It's too, it's too self-indulgent. I gotta shorten it down to 70 pages.
Yeah.
It's a 90-minute movie. Oh, the action. You have to stage that. You can't write it all out. That's too much for an actor to consume. I do think this is an improvement. I am kind of in the season 2 to 4 is kind of the best kind of camp, but I'm gonna have an unpopular opinion as we go on.
We'll return after these messages.
Hello and welcome to Culture Shocked, the pop culture podcast brought to you by 4 aging millennials and our outdated opinions. Join us every Tuesday as we discuss movies, TV, games, and even music, new and old.
Dude, what do you think you're doing?
Are you seriously trying to record a promo without us right now?
Well, yeah?
Dude, you can't just do the promo by yourself. Who's gonna listen to that?
Yeah, and you probably haven't even told them that we're a pop culture podcast where we always agree on everything. For instance, the Sam Raimi trilogy, easily being the best of the Spider-Man movies.
No. But I think we can all agree that Jaws is a classical masterpiece.
Nope, don't like that. But we do all agree that the sequel trilogy of Star Wars is the best in the Skywalker saga, right, guys?
That comment is so ridiculous. I don't even know where to
Anyways, that'll do it from all of us here at Culture Shock. Thanks for listening.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, "Give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win." On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast recs and booty debates. Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Brentfast time. Listen at Brentfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
We let things pile up in the DVR, we add them to our queues, we wait for the DVDs and Blu-rays. We time shift. The Time Shifters Podcast. Sci-fi, horror, fantasy, superheroes, comedy, action, film, television, maybe some not-so-current events. Find us on iTunes or at timeshifterspodcast.com.
Cool thing about Blind Knowledge is we are in multiple countries. We are worldwide all across the globe. We are in the US, we are in the UK, we are in Canada, Germany, India, Japan. We're in Australia, y'all. BlindKnowledge.com. Now back to the feature presentation.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked